This is a review of the Ohuhu 120 color alcohol marker set. This is their new brush marker set that has, in my opinion, the best type of a tip that you want on an alcohol marker, which is the brush tip. And they have a chisel tip on the other side. They also have a set, smaller set, that is a brush tip with a fine tip. I did get that set as well, but as of when I was making this, I don't believe that it's in stock any longer. As you can see, the case that they come in is actually sturdier than most that you would get. It has inserts in here to help keep the colors separated and upright. Now, this isn't the order that they come in when they shipped. I actually rearranged them for my own tastes. There's also included this sheet that you can put in between your pages in order to prevent bleed through, because as we all know, all alcohol markers are going to bleed through. It has a color chart. Obviously, you're not going to really want to rely on that. You want to do your own swatching and your own color chart, because alcohol markers, more so than many other mediums, rarely match the color on the cap. I mean, this is just something that you're going to have to deal with alcohol markers, because it is very difficult to match a color exactly to the cap, especially since these markers are going to look different on different types of paper. Now, that said, we're going to test them out using my standard image, which is a sketch that I did of a hummingbird. This is on a heavyweight cardstock, very similar to regular marker paper. I use this heavyweight cardstock a lot for marker drawings. It takes a lot of the ink and allows you to blend fairly well. I sketched onto the paper using the Col-Erase markers. I believe they're from Prismacolor. I like using those for sketching because you can get a nice drawing down, and they seem to sort of disappear whenever you're using the alcohol markers. You can see this brush tip it's very nice. You can lay it on its side, get a lot of coverage. Let's take a look at the chisel. As expected, the chisel is going to give you a lot more coverage quickly. These markers do appear to be nice and juicy, as all the Ohuhu markers that I've tried are. Honestly, they're one of my favorite of the alcohol markers. I'm not a professional artist by any means with alcohol markers. It's more a hobby. I enjoy using them. I have never used Copics. They're supposedly the Cadillac of the alcohol marker world, but they are far, far too expensive for someone like myself that is not really doing this professionally, just for hobby and entertainment. Now, it does look like these Ohuhu are blending very nicely. Probably should have left that one color out that I was using. One thing to note is that you can come in with a lighter color than the two that you have already laid down and use that to blend as well, and it gives you additional shading. With alcohol markers, the more marker that you lay down, the better you're going to get your shading. You don't want to be shy about going back in and going back over the area, because as you can see, that is precisely what gets the shading of the marker. It's also the reason why you need to use a good heavyweight paper that is either designed specifically for alcohol markers or which is going to be able to take all of that pigment. Definitely blend very nicely. Blending's a little bit easier with these than with some of the other inexpensive brands that I've used. Although all of the brands that I've tried so far do fairly decent. There were a few stinkers. You know, obviously you're gonna have that when you're testing out different types of the inexpensive markers available. But I definitely feel that the Ohuhu is a number one choice. If you can only buy one set of alcohol markers on the less expensive side, and when I say less expensive, these aren't like so inexpensive as some of the sets that you see, but definitely much less expensive than Copics. But the Ohuhu are just, they've always performed well. Every single type that I have tried from Ohuhu does very well. And you can see here what I mean about taking a lighter color than the colors that you've already got there and going in and using that to do your blending. And how adding additional pigment and just keeping going over it, this is what's going to help you get the blends that you're looking for. And oftentimes, if you're using that lighter color, and again, this is just an experimental sketch, so I'm not worried about it, but you'll want to have a sheet where you're going to clean off your tip when you're done blending, just to make sure you don't ever transfer the color to somewhere else. My overall thoughts on the Ohuhu, as I expected, they're a really good marker. They're nice and juicy. The blending is good, and let me just show you here. As you can see, this is why you want to use a good heavyweight paper, either a marketed for markers paper or, as I have here, a very heavy cardstock. I would highly recommend these to anyone who is looking for a set of brush markers at a fairly reasonable price point. Hope this helps you decide if you'd like to try a set of these yourself.